Good morning, and thank you for taking the time to join us today for our webcast, New Incentives and Proof that Office 365 is Transforming the Business of Government. My name is Steve Winter, Vice President here at Planet Technologies. We are excited to provide you with this timely information about Microsoft's current deals for government customers looking to migrate to Office 365. We're going to start off today by hearing from David Walker, Microsoft's Office 365 Specialist and Team Manager, as he highlights the newest Microsoft incentive program that enables existing Enterprise Agreement customers to move to Office 365 with support from Microsoft and its partners like Planet Technologies. Then we're going to hear from our very own George Diaz. George is globally recognized as an Office 365 expert and Planet's lead Office 365 architect, about how Microsoft's on-premise and cloud solutions deliver the best result for public sector organizations, and in particular in a hybrid environment. Before we get started, just a bit about Planet and our experience working with Office 365. Planet was founded in 1998. We've been around for 14 years. We've been there for 14 years to help customers deploy and find the best value in Microsoft products and technologies. We're one of only 35 Microsoft nationally managed partners, and we have a highly skilled staff. We have many Microsoft certified masters, MVPs, certified trainers, as well as community leaders in the Microsoft field. We have office locations here in Washington, D.C., in Maryland, Denver, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Redmond, Washington, as well as a presence in Europe. We serve many vertical markets, primarily in the public sector. So we work with federal customers, state and local government customers, education customers, healthcare customers, as well as some commercial customers. We've also had the opportunity to work in 42 states just last year, and have worked in 33 different customers over our 14 years. As I mentioned before, Planet is very lucky to have an unbelievably skilled staff of Microsoft certified masters and MVPs, as well as community leaders. We have, and matter of fact, our presenter, George Diaz, today is one of only 4 Microsoft Office 365 MVPs, or most valuable professionals in the United States. Planet is a key partner in the early adopter program for Office 365, and we've deployed over 500,000 seats of Office 365. We are also a key partner in the testing and development of what we call vNext, or the next generation of Office 365. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David Walker.
Thank you, Steve. So my name is David Walker. I manage our Office 365 sales and technical team for Microsoft Federal. Microsoft has been building a lot of momentum around cloud services, and certainly the cloud has been building momentum as well. There are over 2 billion internet users today, 4 million searches across Bing. We have 663 million Skype users. In the Fortune 1000, 80% of those today use cloud computing. And Gartner expects that 30% of the data, of all data, will live in or pass through the cloud by 2020. So that's just in a few short years. So the momentum is really building fast. Microsoft's productivity vision is all about delivering the best experience across devices and delivering the cloud on your terms. So whether it's on premises, whether it's online, or whether it's a hybrid of both. We look at things from workloads of messaging, voice and video, content management, enterprise, social, reporting, and analytics, and integrating the best-of-breed solutions into a single platform. And as you can see, our strategy is to deliver this whether you're on a PC device, a Slate type of device, or a mobile device. We've had significant success in delivering this. We have more than 15 years of consumer and business services experience that's been highly successful. We've got 9.9 billion messages a day being delivered by Windows Live Messenger. Over 1 petabyte a month of updates are delivered via Windows Update Services, which is the largest cloud service in the world. Windows Azure is used by customers in 41 countries. And Office Web Apps now boasts 50 million users globally. Microsoft has supported this with significant cloud investments, including over $2.5 billion in cloud infrastructure investments. Over 200 different services are delivered 24/7 across our platform, across various technologies. Our data centers have been built in a geo-distributed manner across both North America and around the world. Our model is designed to actually provide a modular growth capability so that we're able to increase capacity as customer demand requires. Our online services are designed around a set of operational excellence, where our data center operations are federated. They're designed to run 24/7. Everything has been built around a security model that's highly secure, compliant infrastructure that meets FISMA certification, SAS 70, and ISO compliance requirements. And one of our chief focuses is around carbon footprint reduction. Because of the scale that we hit, we're actually able to deliver our services by utilizing less and less power as time moves forward and as our versions increase. Everything is backed by financially backed SLAs at 99.9% uptime. So why Office 365? First, it's designed to be consumed by multiple devices, whether those are touch devices, pen devices, mouse and keyboard devices. We've got optimized technologies for Windows 8 apps, support for Windows Phone, iOS, and Android phones, as well as BlackBerry. From a cloud with Office 365, we now have the ability to deliver Office on demand, so that you have the ability for your users to access Office and the Office server applications wherever they are, whenever they need to get to them, with enterprise-grade reliability and standards that meet what most enterprises require and government agencies require. We've included a lot of social in the latest versions of Office 365, so news feeds and microblogging, the ability to bring in Yammer capabilities with our recent acquisition of Yammer. There are pervasive social capabilities built across Office with Office 2010 and now Office 2013. We give you the ability to do multi-party, high-definition video and Skype federation as well with Office 365. But most importantly, from an enterprise and government records perspective, we give you the ability to have control. Control that data, DLP, Unified eDiscovery, the ability to deploy Office, whether it's through the browser or to the desktop, but through Office 365, and having a common management experience to manage it all. So we have two basic offerings around Office 365 from a license perspective. We have information worker offerings that give you rich productivity, collaboration solutions, the ability to work with client-based deployments as well as cloud-based deployments. We also have a task worker offering, which is our kiosk offering, which is a cost-effective way for users with limited access today to get to productivity solutions. And this is just a small smattering of who's in Office 365. We have tens of millions of customers deployed today. Significant when I start talking about, I'm actually in the federal space, and I start looking at things like what we've deployed recently and what we've announced recently. So yesterday was a great example. We announced our partnership with the Veterans Affairs Administration, or Department of Veterans Affairs, where we actually have won a contract to deploy over 600,000 seats of Office 365. That comes on the heels of winning the Federal Aviation Administration, the United States Department of Agriculture, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Those are just a small number of the growing number of government customers that have deployed. And I only am speaking from the federal perspective, but many states as well, State of California, State of Minnesota, City of New York, and others. And the momentum is building, and certainly the press is as well. So today what we're talking about is launching the ability to help you get to the cloud quickly. Microsoft has built a customer decision framework process to help get customers successfully to the cloud, and delivered in a way that is measurable, allows you to get there confidently without issues. We help you through the steps of evaluating and deploying. And when you look at the solutions that we're delivering with Office 365, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You can tailor what you need for who you need it for. So we have multiple suites available of Office 365 as well as components. So depending on what your needs are, as you can see across this grid, you can go from basic email all the way up to full collaboration suite, including enterprise voice as part of the Office 365 licensing model. So the focus today was to be able to talk about our promotional offer. So Microsoft is starting with our enterprise agreement customers a promotional offer that runs through March 31st, 2013. It gives you the ability to not only purchase Office 365 at a discount on your enterprise agreement, but also receive credit for deployment to be used with many of our partners, and focused here in this conversation around Planet Technologies. So I have a few examples here. So if you're a Microsoft Enterprise Agreement holder, you have different plans available to you. So if you own the Core Cow in Office, you can go to the Office 365 E3 suite for $4.50 a user per month. That gives you Exchange, SharePoint, Lync, as well as Office Pro Plus and Office Web Apps for $4.50 a user. And this is estimated retail, as Microsoft does not sell directly to customers, and your prices will vary depending on who your large account reseller is. But we then provide up to $40 per seat for the first 3,000 seats in migration deployment assistance, so that can be applied to a Planet Technologies to deliver and get you deployed. That's up to the first 3,000 seats, and then $5 a seat beyond that. If you're looking at, in case that you might have the eCow in Office, you can go to the E4 suite, including Enterprise Voice, for $3 a user per month, or the E3 suite for $1 a month. So if you own the eCow in Office and you have that under Software Assurance, you can actually move some of your workload to the cloud for $1 per user per month and receive $40 per user for migration assistance fees for your deployment. If you just have the eCow under Software Assurance, you can move to the E2 suite, which includes Office Web Apps, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and Lync Online for $3 a user per month. Or if you just want to move email by itself, $3.50 a user. Again, $40 per seat for the first 3,000 seats for deployment. So Microsoft's making this investment on your behalf with partners, and particularly in case today we're talking Planet Technology. So. If you own the Core Cow, it's $4 a user per month. We're going just to email. Exchange Plan 1's $1.50 a user per month. Again, the same $40 per seat for deployment investment. And the deployment investment is really designed to help you realize the business value of Office 365 rapidly, making the most of your cloud investments. This gets you to the cloud quickly, meeting government mandates, and gets you there without having to learn how to migrate yourself. You can begin today by planning with Planet Technologies, and we'll help fund that engagement. So the time is now. This offer is on through October 1st, 2012, started October 1st, 2012, and runs through March 31st, 2013. This is a summary of this, and these slides will be made available by Planet Technologies following this webcast. and we look forward to working with you to successfully getting you to the cloud. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to George Diaz, and he'll proceed with some of Planet's offerings around Office 365.
All right. Thank you, everybody, again for attending. My name is George Diaz. Just a little bit about me. I am one of the lead architects of Planet Technologies, focusing in the Office 365 practice, as Steve had mentioned earlier. I primarily focus in the state and local government and education sectors, but have been known to dabble a little bit in some of the federal side as well as in some of the commercial side. I am an Office 365 MVP, and I have some of my information out here, so my Twitter address and my blog address. I blog quite often about Office 365 technologies, some of the tips and tricks that I learn along the way, and try and update that on a pretty regular basis. That's a good place to go if you're interested in some more information. So what I'm going to talk today about is what is hybrid and what exactly does it do for customers? What kind of benefit do people get from it? So when we go out on a lot of these calls and talk to a lot of the customers, what we're finding is in large organizations, it's difficult to migrate the entire population to Office 365. Some customers have specific needs. Some customers have agencies that don't necessarily feel comfortable moving to Office 365, whether or not those reasons are legitimate or not. There are just a lot of variables involved, and you can imagine as you scale up beyond 10,000 people and look at 50,000 or 100,000 people, it becomes very difficult to say, okay, we're going to move our entire environment up to Office 365. So what Microsoft's done is they have introduced what's called hybrid mode, previously under a few different names, but hybrid mode allows you to leverage on-premises Exchange environments to link your environment. So you have your on-premises environment and your cloud environment, and you can link the two together as if they were one seamless organization. There are a few small limitations, but for the most part, it presents your organization as a single seamless organization. So it doesn't look like from a customer perspective or from an outside perspective that you have these two environments. It looks like one nice seamless organization. It also offers near parity, so it gives a lot of the features and experiences of on-premises users and people that are and users that are in the cloud. So things like being able to look up free busy information, be able to do things like calendar sharing and things like that. For the admins, things like being able to watch message header integrity or look at centralizing your mail flow and centralizing your OWA experience. So it gives you some of those features there. It also allows you to migrate your users in and out of the cloud in a very transparent way to the end user. There's very little to no user interaction if you're going to move a mailbox up to the cloud or need to take that cloud mailbox back to your on-premises environment. So taking a quick look at some of the benefits of hybrid. So we have a pretty standard slide here that we go through with a lot of the customers. And I'm not necessarily going to go through each line item here, but you can see some of the difference here. So the two columns we have here, one is called simple, and a simple is just exactly what it sounds like. It's a simple migration. So for a lot of small organizations or organizations that are just looking to do a very quick migration or move from, say, a third party, say Gmail or something like that, you can't get these rich feature benefits of the hybrid model. You just do very simple. So you can do some mail routing. So you could have some users on platform A and then some users on platform B and be able to route the mail. You can share the namespace for the most part. So, go-planet.com, you can have it in your old environment and have it in the cloud. And generally speaking, you can unify the GAL, or the global address list, so that your users can look up, users whether they are in the old environment, in the legacy environment, or they're in your new Office 365 environment. What hybrid introduces is some of these advanced features. So free busy lookup. So to be able to create a meeting and look up other people that are going to be in the meeting that are in your environment and see what their availability is. The out of office understands that you're in a cross-premises environment. So if you are out of office and you set a specific message for people that are in the office, as opposed to your out of office message to just the internet, you can still specify the difference. So if I'm in the cloud and Steve is still on premises and I put my internal out of office on, he gets that internal out of office message. So some of the other things here you can do, so the OWA redirection, so you can have a central single OWA URL, which may be your old one that you're used to. And you can use that and then seamlessly transition between all of these different environments, whether or not you have some mixed mode of Exchange 2010 and Exchange 2003 and cloud. So you have this one nice central portal, so you don't have to start telling your users, okay, if you're here, you're going to go to this interface. If you're in the cloud, you're going to go to this interface. And oh, if you're over here, you're going to go to this interface. So it eliminates that complexity and the confusion to the end users, because obviously the end goal here is to try and make this as seamless as possible for your users. So some of the other benefits you get, you have a single tool to manage cross-premises. So you can use the Exchange Control Panel, and you can use the Exchange Management Console, and you can bring up both your on-premises environment and your cloud environment into a single console, and you can manage your users in that sense. So you can go in and you can add SMTP aliases, or you can move users from on-premises up to the cloud and bring them back, and you can all do it through that one console. So you don't have to worry about multiple management stations or having to log in place A to manage the cloud and place B to manage things that are on premises. So it gives you that nice functionality, and also for other tools like being able to use PowerShell. So you can use PowerShell and manage both environments in kind of a single PowerShell session. Some of the other things from an end user perspective, one of the big ones to look at here is there's no Outlook reconfiguration. So if I go, or for the OST file, so if I take a user that's got, I'm going to pick on Steve here because he has about a 20 gig mailbox. So if we took his mailbox and we migrated him to the cloud, really all he's going to see from his perspective is once his mailbox is moved, he's going to get a pop-up that says your mailbox has moved, please restart Outlook. And that's all he has to do. He doesn't have to worry about his 20 gigs of monstrous attachments and things like that re-downloading to his machine and having an old 20 gig OST file and a new one. It keeps that sync there, so you don't have to worry about those types of things, which is really important for a lot of customers who put out workstations that may not necessarily have a lot of disk space on them and things like that, and have to worry about having help desk out there to manage a migration of 50,000 users. And then some of the last things here from an admin perspective that are really important, so you can preserve some of your header information. So as your messages go through, you can still track messages through their header and see where all the different hops are. It doesn't rewrite any of the headers or anything like that. And you can centralize your mail flow. So you can continue to have mail delivered to your on-premises environment, and if the user's in the cloud, it very seamlessly, the hybrid server will very seamlessly reroute that message up to the cloud and have that kind of back channel to be able to route mail properly. And the same thing with your users in the cloud. When they send a message, it just doesn't go straight out to the internet. It actually comes back through your on-premises environment. So if you have any additional software or tools that you're using, anything to, if you're doing any kind of compliance or you need to be able to validate the messages as they come in and out, you can still do that by centralizing your mail flow through this one hybrid environment. And it makes it really, really nice from an administrative standpoint. So taking a look at some of the supported hybrid models here. Excuse me. So we have a few technologies here. I try to stay away from the oldest of the technologies, but as of right now, 2003 is pretty much the oldest technology that's still pretty prevalent out there in the world. And you can see here we've got, over on the right-hand side, so we've got the 2010 hybrid and a 2013 hybrid. So we're looking at some of the new versions of Exchange 2013 and what they're compatible with. And you'll notice there that in a 2013 hybrid environment, you can't migrate from 2003. And that's a pretty standard practice by Microsoft. Generally speaking, they don't like to go back further than 2 versions from a compatibility perspective. And you can imagine 2013 introduces a ton of new technology, and trying to limit what 2013 can do by making it compatible with a really old version just doesn't make business sense. So if you are going to be moving to this version or the vNext version and you have 2003 in the environment, you can still do that, but you're going to have to use a 2010 hybrid server. And then you can see how the matrix breaks down. So if you have Exchange 2007 or 2010, you can use a 2010 hybrid or a 2013 hybrid. And then if you have Exchange 2013, you can obviously only deploy 2013 with it. So the hybrid wizard. This is something that has come out relatively recently. Back in Exchange Service Pack 1, Microsoft introduced the whole concept of hybrid. At the time it was called, I think, coexistence. and they went through a few iterations of the name, but at this point, it's now widely known as hybrid. And with Service Pack 1, it came with a 60 to 70 page book, depending on how your configuration was, that would walk you through all of the steps to set up hybrid. And it was completely manual, and it was very difficult to do. It didn't leverage some of the newer namespace sharing models, and so you had to end up using some of the older models. They would add these additional service and delegation namespaces for federation, and it became very difficult for admins to do. And even when they went through this, 100 steps, 90% of the time there was still something wrong that caused problems. And a lot of times it had to do with the legacy versions. And if you looked at Exchange 2003 and the way that FreeBSD works, it's different in 2010. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here shortly. But a lot of people ran into problems. So, yes, I can see FreeBSD in the cloud, but no, I can't see FreeBSD from the cloud to on-premises. And how do I make that work? And I'm, trying to move mailboxes, and I'm getting this permission denied or access denied, and what's the problem? So, for a good 3 or 4 months, I think that's pretty much what we did exclusively, was assist people in troubleshooting hybrid model problems. And Microsoft saw this, and they heard a lot from the partners and from the customers out there. So in Service Pack 2, they introduced what's called the Hybrid Configuration Wizard. Now, the wizard itself, it does all of the things that Service Pack 1 did, but it changes a few things. It does it in a more streamlined fashion, so it leverages some of the more advanced features and options that Service Pack 2 comes in, so there's no need for these additional namespaces. For anyone that's signed up for Office 365, you'll know that you end up getting automatically signed up with an onmicrosoft.com address, and they vary depending on how you sign up, but they are now able to leverage that namespace to be able to route mail properly. So it allows you to kind of remove a bunch of the steps and a lot of the complexity. So what the Service Pack 2 Hybrid Configuration Wizard does is it creates a federation between your on-premises environment and Office 365. So it creates that link, and I did a little nice graphic here. So you have your on-premises Exchange environment, you have the cloud environment. Once you deploy the wizard, everyone likes each other, and the two organizations are now linked together, and you have this kind of one seamless environment. Very limited, or there are a few limitations of it. But again, for the most part, it allows you to have this one seamless organization. So when you're building hybrid, what are some of the key design considerations you're looking for? There are quite a few, and one thing that I always say is plan now, plan before you get involved, and plan extensively. For every dollar you're going to spend now, you're going to spend 1,000 in a month for things that you didn't consider originally. So some of the things that you need to think about is, one is directory synchronization. So directory synchronization is a requirement for hybrid mode. And what directory synchronization does is it's a tool that you install on your on-premises environment that reads your Active Directory, and it takes all of your mail-enabled objects and it puts them up into the cloud. So it allows you to continue to manage your objects on-prem. But what it does is it stamps a lot of these objects, so when you're running the hybrid wizard, it has the ability to link your user account, so it allows this hybrid configuration to work. One of the other pieces here is the single sign-on via ADFS, and now with Shibboleth support, but there is a single sign-on solution. Now, it's not a requirement for hybrid, but it is highly, highly recommended. Out of the box, you have your Active Directory, and you have your Active Directory passwords and your own compliance and rules and things that you need to do as an organization to maintain those passwords. Out of the box, Office 365 is going to give you another set of passwords. So even though you're doing directory synchronization, it's not synchronizing passwords. That's the one attribute that it definitely does not synchronize. So you end up with 2 passwords. And as you can imagine, once your users move to the cloud, then they're going to have to manage a separate password that won't necessarily be synced or linked with that password that you have on-prem, and it becomes quite a management problem for having these dual passwords, and also two places to change that password and update that password. So ADFS eliminates that, and what ADFS does is it is a SAML 2.0 token authentication mechanism that when someone logs into Office 365, if you're using ADFS and your domain name is federated, when you try and log in, it will actually redirect that authentication request seamlessly in the background to your ADFS server, which will then query Active Directory, and Active Directory and ADFS will hand off a token. So your password never leaves your environment, which is really important to know. It's a huge security bonus that Office 365 offers with ADFS. That password stays on premises, and as soon as you're authenticated, you have a token that allows you to log into the Office 365 system. So again, it's not required, but it really is highly recommended. And both that and the directory synchronization are two key components that require a lot of pre-planning. Microsoft has what's called the Office 365 Readiness Tool that can be downloaded, and I think on the last slide I have some links that everyone can download when we share this presentation. But the Office 365 Readiness Tool will go through and it'll read your Active Directory, and it'll tell you if you have any objects in directory synchronization that, say, may have characters that are unsupported, or if it has duplicate accounts. Sometimes if you have a parent and child domain, you run into situations where you have duplicate accounts, and that can become a management problem and a synchronization problem. What it'll also do is it'll look through and it'll make sure that ADFS matches, because with ADFS, your user's UPN has to match a routable namespace. And generally speaking, we like it to match the primary SMTP, because you can imagine from a user perspective, if you're going to tell them, okay, you need to log into Office 365, and you give them their full UPN, which for our example is go-planet.com, that matches our primary SMTP. If it didn't, let's say it was internally planet.com, so I say, okay, I have to log in with planet.com, but my email address is go-planet. So a lot of times we want those to match, and most times organizations don't have a routable namespace for their domains. So they do something like planet.local for their Active Directory. So there's a process to go through to actually add those UPNs and update that, and you can do it through PowerShell, and it's a pretty easy process. But there's some considerations there you can imagine. If you have any other applications that rely on that UPN, which a lot of time are other single sign-on type applications. Oracle has a program that ties in, and there's some other ones out there. So there's some design considerations that you need on the front end, and if you don't think about them and you flip over that UPN and all of a sudden, you know, your other line of business application doesn't work, you can imagine your users are not going to be very happy. So those are two really important considerations there. The other one is where your mail is going to flow. Do you want your mail to flow, to continue to flow through your on-premises environment? Do you want your cloud users to go ahead and just send everything straight out to the internet? What are the design implications there? If you do centralized mail flow, it's pretty easy to, you know, keep the design, because you're not changing anything from a, you know, an MX perspective. So you're leaving your mail flow. It's going through whatever, you know, if you have, let's say, an email gateway, it can still continue to go through your email gateway, and it'll connect up to your server, and it'll route properly through to Office 365 and then back from 365 and down. If you want to separate out the mail flow, or if it doesn't really matter, there are some other considerations, because a lot of organizations out there may block your mail if it's coming from two separate sources. So there's the sender policy framework and some of the other things you can do and put records out there to validate and say, okay, I'm going to send mail from my on-premises environment, but I'm also going to allow it from the cloud, and what do I need to set up to make sure that that works properly? If you have Exchange 2003 in the environment, there is a big consideration here. The way that the FreeBSD architecture works is fundamentally different from 2003 to 2007 and 2010 and 13. 2003 leverages public folders to store the FreeBSD calendar and the FreeBSD information. So users that are on 2003 will look up the public folder information when it needs to find FreeBSD information from user A to user B. When you go to 7, 10, and 13, it leverages the availability service. So FreeBSD is, you know, it's changed. So when you put a hybrid in place and you have 2003 in your environment, there is a different configuration model there. You actually have to take an additional step and put a public folder on your 2010 hybrid server and migrate your FreeBSD information or that public folder over to your 2010 server. And then the 2010 server becomes that intermediary between the cloud and your 2003 users. And a lot of times this is where a lot of admins get stuck, because 2003 FreeBSD is not fun. It's difficult, and not necessarily as 2003 to 2010, that conversion process. There's a lot of problems that it runs into, because it's trying to kind of bridge the gap between this legacy application and the new application. So that's one sticking point that a lot of people run into. And it's kind of changed a little bit. I think in the early days, there was a very strict model that said you have to replicate your FreeBSD information to your 2010 server and then remove all the other replicas. That's changed slightly. They've softened their stance, so they've tried to make it a little bit more robust, but again, they're not necessarily going to rethink at their architecture because of a legacy platform. They're just going to try and work from it and say, okay, let's get you off 2003. So that's kind of the business thought there. You also have a lot of firewall considerations and security concerns. Obviously, if you're moving to a cloud-based service and you're a federal or a state and local customer, or any customer for that matter, you have a lot of security concerns. And what is the implication if I'm going to go up to the cloud? And Microsoft has done an amazing job at limiting the exposure to exactly what it needs to be. So there are lists out there that say, for each of the various components that you're going to deploy, here are the set of ports you're going to need. Here's where the servers that they're going to need to go to, and whether it's inbound or outbound. And here are the set of IP addresses that we're going to be sending from our side. So you don't have to go into your firewall and say, hey, allow anyone to come in on port 443 to this server. You can say, no, allow only this subset of IPs from Microsoft in. So they've done a good job of locking it down, but as I go out there and kind of talk to customers, there's still a lot of concern. You know, they feel like they're kind of giving away the keys, keys to the kingdom. And I think it's important to understand that even though you are opening up your firewall to, exposing it slightly, you are locking it down to a very specific subset. And if anyone out there goes through and just opens it up and allows that, I think that's something that needs to be looked at very closely, because it obviously is a security concern, and we want to make sure that everyone understands that Microsoft is trying to make this and has made it as secure as possible, so you can have this hybrid mode and still be very, very secure. And the last little item there is how healthy is your Active Directory. And this ties back to what I talked about with the Office 365 Readiness Toolkit. You are going to be synchronizing your objects between your on-premises environment and Office 365. In the early days, when we did some of the early adopter programs, we ran into a lot of problems with users that were from 2003, Exchange 2003, with corruption in their mailbox. 2003 is a little more notorious for having a little bit of corruption. I've had a few customers, over the years, they end up, an Exchange server goes offline and they've had to defrag their database, and there's just kind of inherent corruption there that just happens as the natural process of business, over the years of having your mail there. Do you want to carry that corruption up to Office 365, or is that corruption significant enough to cause the mailbox not to migrate to 365? And what are some of the implications? It's gotten better over the years, but one of the big things that I ran into for the first at least 6 months of Office 365 was, if we're moving from 2003 straight to Office 365, if the mailbox was over 2 gigabytes, generally speaking, it wouldn't move very well to Office 365. And 2003 would end up timing out because it's a series of calls back and forth. So, the 2003 service says, hey, I'm sending the mail, and 365 opens the connection. So it's kind of this back and forth banter. And you can imagine 2003 doesn't necessarily have the patience to wait for that cloud-based connection. And based on the bandwidth and the time of day and how much bandwidth is being utilized, that becomes a problem. So what we would end up doing is moving those large mailboxes over to our hybrid server, so we have a staging area, and then we move them from the staging area of the hybrid server up to Office 365. And again, that's gotten better, but it's still one of those things that kind of pops out there. And with larger mailboxes comes more corruption as well, and so you may have more corrupt items than you're allowed to move, and some of the key considerations there. So it's always good to really look at your Active Directory and Exchange environment and use this, if anything else, use it as an excuse to say, hey, we need to be pristine. Let's take a look at this and do the right steps to make sure that Active Directory is nice and clean, that we don't have a lot of old objects that don't need to be there anymore, that our user accounts are secure, and that they're, they don't have any invalid characters and things like that, and that our Exchange environment is as pristine as it can be. So when we move up to the cloud, we're not carrying along kind of our legacy junk that we've had over the years. And the last piece I have here is understanding the underlying architecture, and this really has to do with the hybrid wizard. I wrote an article about it for Windows IT Pro Mag a couple months ago, and it was something that was really concerning me as the hybrid wizard came out. And it wasn't necessarily the hybrid wizard itself, which I adore and love the hybrid wizard. The problem is the wizard takes you from a 60-page manual with hundreds of individual steps to a wizard that you basically have about 10 to 12 clicks. So fantastic. It does, it really simplifies the process. But for those people who are deploying the system who were not there for the painful days of pre-service Pack 2, you don't really know what's going on underneath the hood and what exactly is going on. And it's really important to understand what the wizard does. And on the last page, I have a link to the article, and I really recommend that a lot of, if you have a chance, take a look at it, because it really breaks down what the wizard is doing, how it creates its organizational relationships, how it opens up, or runs configuration on Forefront Online Protection or the spam filter in Office 365, how it routes the mail, and how it's leveraging these namespaces and adjusting things in your on-premises environment. And understanding all of those key components, down the road, if something breaks, you can come back and say, hey, FreeBusy isn't working when I look in the cloud. What do I need to look at? Okay, I know I need to look at the organizational relationship because I understand the architecture under it. So I think it's a really key point. It's great that we have the wizard, but don't use that as an excuse not to learn really what's going on underneath. And I think it's really important. All right, so we're going to look at a couple of the scenarios here. I have a little kind of step-by-step guide here that isn't as snazzy as the Microsoft presentation, but I did my best here. So we have a 2003 hybrid scenario. So, and again, this is very simplified. Obviously, there's probably spam filters. You probably have more than one server. But from a very simplistic standpoint, here's our Exchange 2003 environment. So we're basically sending and receiving. So we have, the Internet, and it uses MX records to find our Exchange system. Mail comes in. When mail needs to go out, it goes out, uses DNS to look up MX records, and everything's great. The first thing we do here, excuse me, first thing we do here is deploy the hybrid server. And in this case, I'm actually deploying two, and that's one key design consideration here. For a very small organization that's moving, 50 or 100 users, this isn't necessarily a problem. But if we're talking about 5,000, 10,000, 50, 100,000 users, the hybrid server, and especially in an extended hybrid mode where you are going to keep users on-prem and have users in the cloud, you want to make sure that your 2010 hybrid server is as robust as possible. It really, the key consideration, at least two, obviously, for high availability. But, depending on your scenario, it would make sense to go through and take a look at, say, the Exchange calculator and run through some of the numbers and understand what the proper environment is going to be for your specific scenario. And that becomes a key design consideration. So, but from a simplicity standpoint, here's our what we'll call the hybrid array, which is two client access and hub transport servers that we're using. And you can remember in 2003, we have to move the public folders. So we actually have to deploy a mailbox server too. Now in this instance, it's its own server. You could co-locate, so you could have a client access, hub transport, and mailbox server all on a single server, and you can split it out, however you want. And this, again, this only runs on 2010, so we're not even looking at a 2013 scenario here because you're running a legacy system. So once you have that environment in place, you begin starting to build out your actual hybrid mode. So you look at Office 365, you get your tenant, you set up your DNS records, and then you run through the hybrid wizard. And what the hybrid wizard is doing is it's setting up this back channel. So it's setting up a direct communication between your client access servers and the Forefront servers in Office 365. And it's setting up the trusts, so that you have the FreeBusy lookups and are able to onboard and offboard your mailboxes. So that's the process of running through the hybrid wizard here. Once you're ready, you begin the cutover scenario. So you stop the mail flow to your 2003 server and you change your mail flow over to your 2010 servers. Through the process of deploying the 2010 servers themselves, your 2003 server actually, that routing architecture builds itself as you build your hybrid environment. It creates a routing group connector that will then seamlessly, shift the mail depending on where your users are from 2003 to 2010. The cutover is really telling your MX record, hey, I want to send to the 2010 server, or if you have some sort of mail, let's say a spam appliance or a gateway, just repointing that gateway and saying, hey, our 2010 server is now going to send mail. So that becomes that central interface in this hybrid scenario. And in this mode, now you're in an indefinite hybrid mode for as long as you need to be. So what you can end up doing at this point is you can take your mail, your users from 2003, and you can move your subset of, say 10,000 users up to Office 365, and you can keep a subset of, say, 1,000 users in your on-premises environment, and then you can eliminate the 2003 environment. And then you're really in what we consider an extended or permanent hybrid mode. And this is perfectly supported. We have a lot of customers that run this and plan to run it kind of forever. Some customers, want to run it until they get that buy-in from every single department, and as the departments feel more comfortable, they end up moving up to Office 365, and then at that point, mail flow can be directed straight to Office 365, and you can completely get rid of all your on-premises environment. So there's lots of different kind of models that you can play with, but extended hybrid or permanent hybrid is a fully supported model, and it allows you to do really everything that you want to do. The next one we have here is the 2007 environment. You're probably going to notice a lot of similarities here. So you have your Exchange 2007 environment. You bring in your 2010 server. In this case, this can be a 2010 or it can be a 2013 server. Now, the 2013 architecture changes slightly in terms of the roles and the names of them, so like the client access and hub transport and mailbox. So I'm not necessarily going to dive into that at this point, but just know that the hybrid server can be a 2010 or a 2013 hybrid server. And you notice here we don't we don't have to do the mailbox role. 2007 leverages the availability service, so FreeBusy lookups will actually continue to function as it had before without needing that public folder there, which is nice. Most people don't like public folders that much anymore. So once we have our environment in place here, then we run through the wizard, we establish the connection there, and then we begin the process of cutting over the mail flow. So from the internet, we change our MX record, we send it to 2010, 2007 uses the hub transport to be able to route mail accordingly, and then everything flows here. So from an actual mail flow perspective, what ends up happening is if I'm in Office 365 and I have this model set up, the message comes in to me, JDiaz at go-planet.com. It goes to my 2010 hybrid server, which then looks that up. It looks up my address. And because I've moved up to Office 365, I no longer have a mailbox, but I still have a mail object or I'm a mail user. And so the Exchange 2010 server actually looks at my account and says, aha, his routing address is actually the on Microsoft one I referenced earlier. So it says, hey, even though my address is go-planet, actually route this mail to, and I think ours is planet.onmicrosoft.com. So it says, please route that mail that way, which then goes to the transport server and looks at the send connector. And the hybrid wizard had set up a send connector to say any mail going to planet.onmicrosoft.com, forward that to Forefront Online in Office 365. And it very seamlessly, it doesn't change what my email address was, it just routes it to that address. So then I get that message, it shows up in my inbox, it shows coming to me at go-planet.com, not on Microsoft, and it allows me to work with the message as I need to. And I can reroute the message, so if I need to reply to that message, I can send that message and it'll come from Forefront Online, it'll drop down to the 2010 servers, which will then see the mails going to hotmail.com or outlook.com, and it will route it out through the normal send connector. Or if it's going to stay on-prem, if I'm sending over to Steve, it'll look and it'll see that he's still on-prem, and it'll drop it into his mailbox. So one of the last things here I want to talk about are some of the enhancements that what we're affectionately calling vNext. There's a blog out there that talks about a little bit of these and goes into some more depth. But what Microsoft really tried to do is they've tried to make the 2013 hybrid model a little bit more flexible. So one of the problems we run into now is when you set up your send and receive connectors, because we talked about scoping them to a specific set of IP addresses and saying, well, I'm going to send mail to Office 365, but I'm not just going to send it out to the internet. I'm going to send it to address A through address G. But Microsoft also reserves the right to add on data centers or remove data centers as time goes on. So generally speaking, those IP addresses stay the same forever, but they have changed, and they are very clear about that on the portal. There are links that say, here are the addresses, please check back to make sure these haven't changed. And as you can imagine, as an admin, you do a million things in a day. One of your daily tasks isn't necessarily to go out to the internet and look for these 50 addresses and say, hey, address 51 has changed. So one of the things that the Hybrid Wizard has done is it's become an adaptive hybrid wizard, and it leverages some different tools so that you no longer need to worry about those IP addresses. Those are actually more dynamic. So it allows the Hybrid Wizard to actually adjust itself. So if data center A goes offline and they bring data center Q online, the Hybrid Wizard will actually automatically change that in 2013, and so you don't have to go into your connectors and adjust those. Some of the other things they've done is they've added integrated support for edge servers, and they've enhanced secure mail. So they've added some security features that are some really amazing. One of the biggest things that we talk about with a lot of our customers is security and how data loss prevention and things like that are going to be handled in the next version. So they've added a ton of security features that are really built into a lot of the consoles and allow you to much more effectively manage the security of your mail. So you can imagine now with the current version of Office 365, if you have to go in and make any modifications to the spam filter, you have to log in through the portal and then go to a specific page and then click a link that will take you into the Forefront Online. Well, that's all been integrated into a central single console now that you can log into and manage. You can also get some enhanced reporting, so it's pretty neat if you need to come back to admins and say, or back to the executives and say, here's how we can prove that our DLP software is actually working and doing what it's supposed to do. Here are the 50 things it caught. Here's a nice pretty bar chart and graph, and everyone knows we love bar charts and graphs. So it gives you some really nice tools to be able to use. Again, flexible mail routing. So it's going to give you some enhanced features. Some of the things we talk about here are changing where you centralize your mail flow, so it gives you some options and some flexibility there. It also improves the centralized mail transport, and it integrates the mailbox migration and move wizard. So right now, and there's a couple different ways you can migrate mailboxes, and there are different tools. So what they've done is they've created this one through the web console. There's a single wizard that you can run through, and you can tell it, if you want to do an onboarding or an offboarding, or if you want to do all these different migrations, and it's an adaptive wizard. So as you go through and click an option, it's kind of one of those create your own stories. So if you hit option F and you decide to go to the left, you get to see the wizard as opposed to going around the mountain. So you kind of have some options there to change around what you're doing with your wizard, and it's pretty adaptive in the way that works. So some of the last things I have here are some additional resources. One of the things I talked about here is the Windows IT Pro article. And there's the link to it there. So it's called Deconstructing the Hybrid Wizard. The name's actually much longer than that. It went through too many edits, so they decided to add a book as the title. But the basic idea of the entire article is to understand what steps are involved that the Hybrid Wizard does in the background while you're clicking next, next, next. So it really breaks it down, and it gives you some good resources and tools to understand what the various components are and how to troubleshoot it if any one of those steps breaks. Some of the other things out there, the Exchange Best Practices Analyzer. Now with 2007 and 2010 and 13, those are built into some of the tool sets for the Exchange Management Console, but that is one of the best tools you can use out there to get a quick snapshot of exactly what your Exchange environment's doing. The Exchange Deployment Assistant. This was the guide I was talking about pre-Service Pack 2. That was like a 70-page article. The link there actually takes you to this actually really neat adaptive program, and it'll tell you, what are you looking to do? Are you looking to go 100% cloud? Do you want to mix and do hybrid? Are you moving from a third-party source, or whatever the different options? Are you going to go pure, even if you're just doing an on-prem environment? So you pick your option, and then you go through and you tell it what features you're looking for. Are you looking for FreeBusy? Are you looking for the ability to do onboarding and offboarding? Are you looking for public folders, which don't exist in the current version of Office 365. So what are those different options? And then it builds a customized plan that you can download as a PDF or work through it in the web browser that kind of works through your specific individual steps. And it has been updated for the Hybrid Wizard, so you can go through there and you can get the updated steps. It doesn't necessarily talk in depth as to what the wizard is doing. It's more of a how-to, but it is definitely a great tool out there. One of the best, the two best tools that I know about out there, especially as you're troubleshooting once you start deploying your system. One is the remote connectivity analyzer, and this is one of the biggest problems that Exchange admins run into out there. And what the connectivity analyzer does is it checks all your virtual directories, your certificates, your authentication mechanisms into the various services. So whether it's AutoDiscover or Exchange Web Services or whatever the various components, it allows you to go through and put in some credentials and test and get a real-time report that tells you exactly what's wrong with your on-prem environment. Because as you run through the Hybrid Wizard, some of the errors that it can spit out if your configuration isn't done right on premises can be a little difficult to interpret. So it'll give you an error that's just more generic. But if you go to the remote connectivity analyzer, it'll tell you, hey, you don't have a certificate that matches AutoDiscover, or your AutoDiscover record is not set up, or you have the incorrect permissions on one of your virtual directories. So it gives you some really granular information that, at worst case, you can take that over to the community and say, hey guys, I am running into this problem, here's the report, and I can guarantee you'll get 10 responses within 5 minutes that'll give you exactly the information that you need. The last one there is called the Office 365 DNS Checker. It was done by one of my fellow Office 365 MVPs, and it's a really neat, quick and easy little site. It's called testmyoffice365.com. You go to the website and you give it your vanity domain. So in our case, go-planet.com, and you tell it what services you signed up for. So did you sign up for Lync? Did you sign up for SharePoint? Did you sign up for Exchange Online? And when you select your options and you click test, it will actually go through and it'll tell you for those various services if your DNS records are all set up properly. So did you set up the proper service records so that you can use Lync properly in the federation and the presence and things like that, or is your AutoDiscover record set up, and do you have a mail and an MX record and things like that? So it's a great site to go to. And then the last thing we have there is obviously the link to Planet and my email address there. If anyone has any questions or wants to talk further about the Hybrid Wizard or anything we talked about today, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. And David's information is also there, so if you have any specific questions for him in the program, feel free to reach out to him. So I'm going to pass it off to Steve, and thank you all for listening.
George and David, thank you very much. Really appreciate your really insightful presentations. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining Planet Technologies today on our webcast about Office 365 and the Microsoft promotion. Once again, we'd like to thank you very much for your time, and we really do hope that this has been valuable to you. As you can see, Microsoft is providing an incredible incentive to government customers. And George and the rest of the Planet Technologies team, we are here and ready to help you and support you. Please feel free to reach out to your Microsoft rep or Planet Technologies directly if you have any questions about the hybrid solution George presented or the Microsoft promotion. Also, for your information, we will provide those attending today with a link to today's presentation as well as the PowerPoint deck. Once again, thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you at the next Planet Technologies webcast.